Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. Please let us know where you're from, post it in the chat, and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. We're going to give everybody another second to join in. Please let us know where you're watching from today. Please just post where you're from in the chat. Awesome. I see a lot of people letting us know where they're from. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's ILEAFORUM event. My name is Gwen McNutt, CSCP, and I'm the chair of the ILEA Professional Development Committee. We're so happy you're here. We're excited to bring you this educational opportunity. I also wanted to thank our ILEA headquarters team that is helping us produce these webinars. We definitely could not do it without them, so thank you. Today we'll be presenting Leaning into Industry Diversity, Practical Steps to Making Change, powered by Giants Enterprises. ILEA is proud to team up with longtime partner Giants Enterprises to create relevant, timely, and high-quality webinar content for our community as we support our industry through recovery. Giants Enterprises is dedicated to the curation and development of new ventures complementary to the San Francisco Giants franchise by delivering larger-than-life experiences to millions at Oracle Park and beyond. Giants Enterprises creates memorable events abundant with excitement and engagement, both virtually and in person, for their varied partners, as well as local and international visitors. Positioned at the intersection of sports, entertainment, meetings, events, tourism, and hospitality, Giants Enterprises provides the rare combination of people, experiences, and platforms necessary to create giant impressions. Thank you again, Giants Enterprises. Now, just a little housekeeping before we get started. We will be recording today's session, and the recorded version will be available on the ILEA Hub. If you have questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A, and we'll try to get to some of them at the end of the conversation. Also, please share your thoughts and join in what I'm sure will be a robust conversation in the chat. And finally, we'd love for you to engage with us and share your thoughts and experiences on social media using the hashtags ILEA Webinar Wednesday and ILEA Welcomes All. After a short introduction, I'm going to hand the reins over to today's moderator, Steve Moore. Steve is the chair of the ILEA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force with a career that spans over 20 years. He is widely known in the Atlanta hospitality industry for his energetic attitude and exceeding clients' expectations. Steve's attention to detail and his flair for style are two of the many reasons he is recognized as an industry leader. He has also held a number of other ILEA board positions, including membership and past president of the Greater Atlanta chapter. He's also currently serving as a member of the National Events Council. Now, without further ado, I'm handing things over to Steve. Steve, take it away.
Thanks, Gwen. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the International Live Events Association Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, thank you for joining us today. We know that your time is valuable and appreciate you sharing it with us. We are very excited to present today's panel along with future programming in conjunction with ILEA's Professional Development Committee. As an association, we're excited to join others in celebrating Global Diversity Awareness Month. During the month of October, we will celebrate and increase awareness on diverse beliefs, cultures, and ethnicities. Today, we have a panel of powerful and amazing industry leaders. We hope that this conversation will promote new ideas, perspectives, and strategies that you can apply in your own businesses, careers, and day-to-day life. At this point, I'd like to introduce all of our panelists and share a little bit about their backgrounds, and then we will jump right into the conversation, so let's get started. First, we have Sheila R. Brown, Executive Director of CineCares Foundation at Cinescape Chicago Film Studio. Sheila has enjoyed a diverse career in broadcast television, event management, marketing, and public relations, working with some of the country's most recognizable companies and brands, including the NBA, the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, TNT, ESPN, Procter & Gamble, Gillette, and Motown Records. Sheila's current role as the executive director allows her to combine her many years of working in the entertainment with her years of working with charitable foundations to now lead CineCares' organizational strategy and vision, fundraising, external relationships, and board engagements. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Steve.
Next, we have Felipe Cardenas, co-founder of the Colombian LGBTQ+ Chamber of Commerce and Board of Treasurer for the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association. Felipe leads the Chamber's board and operations for 160+ members and 15+ corporate partners in Colombia, and represents the organization internationally and ensures the consolidation of its portfolio geared at memberships, partnerships, events, and certifications. Felipe has more than 10 years of experience leading high-performance teams, both in physical and virtual environments at local, national, and international levels. He is also an advisor to 2 different entities in Latin America and Europe about growth, organizational development, and foreign trade. Thank you for joining us, Felipe.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here.
And finally, we have Andrew Roby, event storyteller of Andrew Roby Events and founder, CEO of the National Events Council. Andrew is a proud Army vet who happens to be a great event and wedding planner. Within his 13-year career, he has had the honor of working with brands such as the International Spy Museum, Axum Resource Management, Simon Malls, The Knot, Montelucci Bride, the CW, the Art Institute, the Northern Virginia Magazine, the City of Alexandria, Virginia, Vita Coco, and Kind Snacks. His work has also been seen in Forbes, CNN, Fox, Washingtonian Magazine, Modern Luxury, Wedding Chicks, Logo TV, Wedding Wire, and many other leading publications. He is most proud of his work with some tremendous charities like Miss Veteran America, Susan G. Komen, the Cinderella Foundation, and so others might eat, who dedicate their lives to helping others. Great to have you with us, Andrew.
Hey everyone, it's really a pleasure to be here. Truly honored, so thanks for this opportunity.
All right, now we got the formalities out. Let's jump right into this situation we got going on here. Let's start with our first question. What has been the driving force behind your decision to be a change agent for diversity in the event industry? And this is, I would like to hear from everybody.
Well, if I could start, I would say my driving force has been the lack of seeing such diversity through my career of 30 years in entertainment. You know, it seemed as though the higher I went, the less people I saw and those types of things. And so I decided to really try and make a concerted effort, because I realized it wasn't going to happen just by osmosis. You've got to put some real effort into it and be intentional with your efforts. And so it was just the lack of seeing that diversity that inspired me to focus on that more.
Yeah, I truly agree. I think one of the things that has driven me to be a part of this movement is just making sure that people stop struggling. People who look like me are no longer in a position where they're struggling to do what they love. Like, you know, we're in an industry that brings about excitement. So we bring about excitement, but at the same time, the people who facilitate that excitement are struggling in order to do what they love. So I have that burning fire inside me to be like, I want you to be like our clients. I want you to love what you do. I want you to embrace everything that the event industry brings about. And so this is part of that. So this is what's causing me to really facilitate all the things, the initiatives that we have going forward.
In my case, if I may continue, I would like to add that what drives me and what passionates me about working for diversity in this industry is I do see the need to walk the talk every single day. Just to share from my personal experience, I have the huge privilege to have an African-American mother and an African-American brother and an African-American husband. So I do understand being a biracial family or multiracial family and also in my relationship, how, for example, in sexual diversity, in my case, leading the Chamber of Commerce, easily we were ending up having just a bunch of white, cisgender gay men. And I was telling to all my friends and colleagues, how diverse is this? So that's just the easy path to do. But when you start asking the questions and when you start trying to walk the talk to be truly inclusive and diverse, is when you start seeing the changes happening. That is what drives me the most.
So, you know, all of us have been in the industry for a very long time, right? Do you mind if I ask how many years each of you have been in the event industry?
30.
30, okay.
13 for me.
Uh-huh.
It's 10 for me.
10, okay. So we're all about the same. When did you guys realize, like, where were you when you realized that you were not in a that you weren't in a diverse atmosphere?
I'm going to say the moment I started.
I was trying not to go back that far.
and because, okay, so I say that because I'm an Army vet, right? And so in the military, there is no such thing as not being diverse, right? Because we have literally everyone from all walks of life, even, you know, foreign, you know, citizens who are now dual citizens or now citizens of the US that are part of the military. And so that was never a concern to me. But when I got out of the Army to start planning events, I was like, wait a minute, what is going on? Why such resistance? Why such, you know, walls being built up? Because I'm not used to this. So honestly, for me, it was literally the moment I started that I've felt that way.
I think mine came a little later. I started my career doing television production and sports. And so dealing with the NBA and not so much the NBA and Major League Baseball, not so much hockey, you know, you did see diversity in the players. So it felt like it was diversity, you know, all the way around, but in the folks behind the scenes, not so much. But then when I started to focus on actual event production with the clientele that I acquired, I was quite often the only person of color in the room. And I kept saying, where are we? I know there's more, you know, excellent people and so forth out there that could be doing this and working with them, but it just wasn't there.
In my case, was similar than Sheila. Like what ended up happening with our activities in the Colombian Chamber, but also in IGLTA in the US, is we start doing a lot of events. And we, like I say at the beginning, we ended up having not only the audience, but also the vendors and the staff. It was just a bunch of gay, white, cisgender men. And then we say, not even women, not even gender parity. And we were saying, like, how wrong is this? So we with a group of friends, we start raising those questions and trying to do more in order to get more diverse audiences and also colleagues, partners, and staff members for all the events we were producing.
You guys nailed it perfectly, which leads me to the next direction I want to go with this. You know, is what are the most common misconceptions people have about the event industry as far as being diversity? You know, I know one of the things that when I speak, we've always been serving the room, right? That does not make us, that's not what we're talking about here. So Sheila, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I would just say that, and I don't want to describe it this way. It's just like our growth, our upbringing and so forth. We're used to seeing certain things. And I think that when I got into events, people equated those that had money with knowing quality, or those who had been with certain backgrounds to know quality. Here I was, this young girl growing up on the, from a divorced family on the west side of Chicago, and I didn't know it at the time, but probably poor and so forth. So how would I know how to deliver such quality to the millionaires and the billionaires and so forth that I was dealing with, So I think there was that unconscious bias of, oh, well, you can come along and help us build this, but how would you know the things that we would like necessarily? So I think that sometimes is a trigger for people. They're just used to seeing a certain person associated with quality.
Right. Andrew, I would love for you to jump on this, because it seems like Sheila gave us a perspective from corporate, but I know you do a lot of weddings, and luxury goes in part with that, correct?
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. For me, it's it's really weird, because in the wedding industry is just such huge variations, I guess. And so I agree with what Sheila is saying. And although even the corporate side may be a little bit different, I do believe that carries over into the wedding side, or even, the luxury side of things, where I just feel, a lot of times I feel alienated. Like, I feel like I am that unicorn, you know what I mean? And I know that there's other people that are out there that are doing their thing at probably a much higher level, higher rate than I am. But it's the lack of representation that really gets to me, that I don't really necessarily see as often, which I really wish that we would. Of course, like for instance, me in my little pocket, we have our community of people that highlight us and showcase us, but it's not the same when it's across the board. So I don't know. It's just a little weird for me, just to even to try to frame that, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else want to add anything to that one?
In my case, I would like to add that from my personal experience, and especially because I am Colombian, I am Latino, and in the US, I do a lot of events with Latino communities. I just want to highlight in this question a very good learning point that I have concluded over these years, and is that talent is not defined by how you look or what you love or how you speak. Like, for example, with the Latino community, it's very easy to run events with people that is not fluent in English, that not necessarily are fully fluent in this language, or that have a funny accent like me. But at the end, that is not necessarily a barrier for them to deliver the job that was asked to be done in an event, planning, production, or even post the event. And that's something I just wanted to add in this question. Talent is not defined, and especially in this industry, when now it's virtually, but with so many events done physically on site, by how you look or how you speak or who you love. And that's something I believe the entire industry can learn better and evidence in the events we are planning and delivering.
I love that. I think that hits on so many things.
So Felipe, my next, just to piggyback on what you were just talking about, what are some ways that event professionals can, make decisions from a place of understanding and real desire to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the industry, rather than just saying, I'm doing it by checking a box?
Yes, and I love when I saw that question, I was thinking my answer. I would like to say that don't take the easy path. Like, you need to reach further. It's very easy for me to pick up my phone, call some friends, get some quotes, and put together a high quality event and maybe deliver it successfully, profitable, and have more contracts with that client. But that is not necessarily the easy job and the easy path. When you start browsing for different vendors, going to different places, joining different networks, challenging your point of view and learning from other people that might be completely different from you and your backgrounds, but actually innovate with those learning experiences, is when you become a truly professional on the event industry. And I would just like to highlight that you need to reach for different sources of everything, of information, of vendors, of staff people, like of every single resource you use to event. You shouldn't take the easy path, because especially when people are so specialized and have so many years in the industry, which I respect a lot, because experience for me is really valuable, but you ended up having your own network and you are not necessarily reaching outside of that. And I always like to challenge those very stable structures of how you can deliver things.
I would even add that not only do you not take the easy route, like Felipe just said, but it actually starts with the mindset. It starts with valuing the diverse voices and the diverse skill sets and the diverse contributions that can be made. And when you look at it from that standpoint, it's less about, okay, let me look around the table. I have an Asian, I have an African-American, I have a Latino, you know, it's less than that. It's, you know, diversity of voices and experiences and so forth that you value. Therefore, you will seek that diversity in your output and in your outreach.
So Sheila, to that point, what would you tell somebody who is trying to ensure that they are promoting diversity in industry?
I would tell them exactly that. I would say, don't look at it as, you know, I said to someone the other day, this has been going on before it became passe. This has been, you know, I've been trying to do this before it became something where the lights came on after the recent social unrest and so forth. And organizations started saying, oh, how can we do this? And they started calling me and saying, how can we make meaningful change and so forth? I was doing this well before that. And it was because I valued the fact that people want to make a contribution, and I feel that all contributions are valuable. So it does not mean, however, that if you haven't been doing it, that you shouldn't do it now. There's never a wrong time to start appreciating diversity, diverse voices, diverse experiences, and so forth. And I say, start to even look around you. You know, sometimes diversity happens through osmosis. I bring a person of color onto a project, and then someone thinks about, oh, I have someone I went to school with, or that I worked with another project on, you know, that was excellent as well. When you start to see different, you start to act differently, you know. Right. So it's really being intentional, but also, you know, giving it some real thought. Don't just check that box.
Well, you know, I'm so glad you said that, because, you know, in the height of everything that's going on, I've had people give me a call and say, hey, how do I diversify my list? Do you have XYZ planner or designer that you can refer me? And I feel like there's a lot of people doing that. Would one of the gentlemen like to kind of pick up that conversation? You know, how can somebody, like on the real term, start to, what do you say when somebody calls you and says, hey, I need a Black planner on my list?
I mean, for me, okay, so.
Let's put it out there. Let's get real.
I'm gonna keep it real, but I so this is the thing. I think we've become very lazy, right? We ask our clients, our customers to do more than what we're willing to do ourselves, which we need to stop, right? And what I mean by that is that we have technology that needs to be used to our advantage. If we have to sit here and ask a Black person what other, or not just a Black person, but a person of color, who should they be reaching out to? You're not doing the work, and it is part of the problem that we're facing. So many people want to be spoon-fed solutions and not necessarily do the work in order to generate their own solution. What we're facing right now is something that is unique. It is not a one solution fits all type of problem. It's something that each and every one of us has to tackle within our own communities, within our own companies, and within the systemic structures that we have built for ourselves, not knowing a Black or brown person as a vendor is a systemic issue that you have built for yourself within your company. It's part of networking. And if I'm networking, I want to make sure that I am reaching as many people as possible. Here in DC, I have already contacted numerous venues, for instance, because venues are one of the culprits that has this particular problem.
Mhm.
And where they have curated preferred vendor lists and struggle to really be able to provide diversity to clients. If you are a vendor, if you're a catering company, if you're a florist, whatever it is, you can't possibly tell me that you only have one type of client. Your client is only white or your client is only Black. You have so many types of clients that are in need of an event. Why not have a diverse group of vendors that are capable of providing the service at the high level? Felipe brought it up too. The color of your skin does not determine the ability for you to be able to curate and execute anything whatsoever. I've seen plenty of people of all shades that have been able to execute amazing high quality events. So we have to do the work ourselves to fix this. It should not be, hey, let me go call a Black person because I think that person knows somebody else or a Hispanic person, etc. Stop that, please.
So Felipe, I want to ask you this. What is the number one piece of advice you would give an industry professional who, I'm sorry, skip that one, the wrong one. What questions are you most tired of hearing on this subject? You know, about diversity, about inclusion, and you wish
Oh
to
my God. We wouldn't finish today. We wouldn't finish.
How much time do we have,
Yeah,
Steve?
exactly. Just to share a very personal one. For example, in my case, when I introduce myself and trying to do, I don't know, a networking event or something, and the first thing a lot of people tell me, where are you from? And I'm Colombian. But you don't look like. And immediately I answer back, how should I look for you to be considered Colombian? Like, I don't get it. Like, why is that assessment? Which image you have from us in your mind that when you challenge your mindset, you pop up these questions? The second thing is, again, and this is probably amongst all of us as human beings, we tend to relate certain type of people to certain type of quality, prices, timelines, and that's completely wrong. Again, in such a dynamic industry as this one, and even though these days with COVID and everything that is going on for our industry that move a lot of virtual events and spaces like this one, is such a dynamic industry, you have to have relationships with a lot of people, and you have to have the possibility to connect and interact with a lot of people. The moment you start putting mindsets and bringing those bias to the way you relate and connect with people, for me, this is my very personal point of view, you are losing business and you stop adding value. And for me, that's a principle in life. Any wave of discriminations goes against businesses, period.
You know, it's like, I used to own a hair and makeup agency. And for the first 5 years, I didn't put my picture on it because I didn't want people to think I did one type of hair and makeup, right? Which in actuality, most people equate me being a Black man, I could do black hair and black makeup better. No, it was totally opposite because I don't have sisters. So I don't know how to work Marcel combs. So I get exactly what you're talking about with that. What would you say from a marketing standpoint, you know, people that have those concerns about not wanting to put their picture out there or be too one way? You know, any feedback on that?
I would say go for it. In my case, I know there are ways, clever ways to communicate, but if you want to be a little more maybe aggressive in the way you want to communicate, and maybe you will lose some businesses for that, or you might be afraid of losing some businesses for that. If that actually happens, which I challenge, at the end, I consider that a blessing. God forbids to have working for a client that I don't feel proud of and satisfied to be doing businesses with. I prefer losing those opportunities. That's my personal point of view.
So Sheila, yeah, I want to jump in with Sheila on this because I want to hear your response on this.
Well, to keep it simple, I'm not tired of any question, because in reality, I'm hoping that the question is being generated by someone that generally has an interest. I would be tired of a question that is, okay, how do we do it? Because that's the thing to do now, you know, and so forth. But if someone genuinely comes to me, I always say no question is a dumb question, no question is a bad question. I'd rather us be talking about it, because if you're afraid to ask, and I'm the only one that you could potentially ask this question, then you're not going to move off of your spot. So I would actually say no question, I'm tired of hearing. I may even have a different answer each time. It depends on what experiences I've most recently had, but I welcome all questions as it relates to that, because I believe that dialogue is good.
May I add to what Felipe said? Because I think of course Felipe and Sheila have two really good points, but in regards to the marketing aspect of it, I think that we need to stop trying to be all things to all people, and that all people are not all things to us.
Correct.
And what that means is that if you do not, why would you want to do business with someone that is not going to fill your soul, that's not going to make you happy, that's going to put you in a toxic environment, that's probably going to pay you less than what you even deserve to begin with? We have to understand that whenever we're doing business with people, I intentionally, whenever I create a proposal, especially for like my government contracts, I intentionally put my face and the face of my team on those proposals, because I want you to know up front what you're getting. And honestly, I would challenge people who would say, well, if I put my face up as a Black person or as a person of color, I may not get all business. 75% of the corporate work that we do is not for Black people, not Black organizations. And that's okay. That's because of the fact of what we execute, the level we execute, the customer service we provide. Of course, we still have our amazing Black and brown clients. We love them. Same thing goes for weddings and social events. At this point, it's probably half. So there's tons of people out there that are going to hire you and love you for you. Focus on that.
But I will add this as a caveat. In more recent years, it is an asset to show that diversity and so forth. I think, Steve, you and I, who may be going back a little bit further, there was a time when that could be a deterrent for business. Now, I never hid who I was. I actually had a situation where I was working with a producer from the Cleveland Indians one year, had been talking to him for years, and we met at an NBA broadcast meeting or something, and he came up to me and said, "Sheila, you're Black." And I said, "Yeah, I have been for about 30 years now." So I get it that sometimes people are surprised, but I didn't have a reason. I was a behind the scenes person, so I didn't have a reason at that time for them to see me. But it was probably that he thought, how could, wow, I didn't think a person was doing that at that level. But I do think, Steve, that was more of an issue before than it is now. I think now that actually is an advantage and an asset for people to see that diversity.
Well, Sheila, we have been in those situations, because I think you and I definitely started our careers around the same time, where we had that, hey, oh, you're Steve? Oh, you're not what I thought you were going to be, versus now it's okay. It's totally fine to be that person. Let's talk a little bit more about if you've had those clients that have said cross things where you've had to parted ways. Have any of you guys had those experiences?
I have not. I have certainly been in situations with my clients. I will tell you, in 30 years, I've probably only had 2 or 3 clients, either personal or corporations, that were minority owned as clients. Most of my clients have been non-people of color, and I have not had instances with my particular clients. I have had instances sometimes with the guest of theirs, or with an announcer that they might have brought into the event or something of that nature, you know, where it was never that anyone said anything offensive to me, but I'm offended by your language if you're saying anything in offense to anyone, you know, here, but just the lack of sensitivity, you know, or the saying something that they're used to saying in a room that did not have people of color, and not appreciating the fact that there's someone here now that that might apply to. But not with my clients directly, no.
Yeah, same here. My situations have always been with either if a client hired a vendor outside of me, like someone I didn't initially vet and they brought on, or it has been in regards to a venue personnel, whether it was the venue coordinator or sales manager or a staff member, where I was like, you know, okay, well, one, I address everything right then and there because I see everything as a lesson to be learned. So, you know, going into venues and people thinking that I'm just a regular person, or I'm not, you know, someone of authority, especially when it comes to my clients' events, and thinking that they can say whatever they want to say, I have to address that. And it's happened a few times. And I'm like, okay, one, I'm the planner. So I'm the one that's giving directions. I'm the one that's producing this. So I don't appreciate, you know, one, treatment, language, and everything else. And then I also bring it up to the general manager too, because I think that that's something that's important because it's a cultural thing. It's something that's embedded within that organization that has to be fixed. So I'm like Sheila, it hasn't necessarily happened with a client, but it has happened with vendors and venues.
In my case, it's similar. Remember, coming from Colombia, and we, with IGLTA, we run a lot of events on tourism. And this happens all across Latin America and in the US too. But especially, remember, Latin America is a quite religious region of the world, especially Catholic, where the concept of sin and homosexuality close together with that concept goes against pretty hard. And with venues specifically, I had the experience from all over the regions, talking about Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, going to venues to make sightseeing and to see if that venue qualifies for the event. And when we start getting the quotes for the event, for the venue, and then we explain that it's an LGBT tourism event, some of the venues react and they say, we don't know, we are going to review, we are available, we haven't hosted an event of people like you. And that people like you is very, very, very funny to hear. But something positive to share is that in some of those experiences, when we actually get the place, because the quote we got and the venue itself was really good, the general managers of the people in charge of the event in the venue, when they come and they see what we plan and what we deliver, it's always the same answer. They say, I never imagined I was going to see this. Like, quite surprised. And I always like to pick their tongues, and I always ask back, well, what did you have in mind then? What did you thought you were going to see then for us doing? Because it's very interesting. You start getting all these mindsets, all these preconceptions of people thinking that because we are going to put a lot of sexually diverse people in our venue, I don't know what they have in mind we are going to do. And it's very funny. It's very funny, the answers you get.
Oh, definitely, definitely. It's like being a Southerner and somebody saying you don't know how to cook Southern food. You know, you're just like, what goes in it? It's grease. I mean, it's butter. It's all that great stuff. So, I mean, you know, we're no different. We're no different. You know, I'm married to a man. You know, and I think all of us we surround ourselves both professionally and personally with people where we don't see these things, right? Or it's not at the top of your mind. So when you hear these cross words, you're kind of taken back at first, like, oh no, she didn't, or something like, you know, you kind of get that. Do you guys get that response as well?
I do. There's an old saying in Black culture for older folks that used to say, wherever you show out, which for people that don't understand what show out means, it means act up. Wherever you show out is where you get it at, you know, which means you get straightened out right there. It goes back to what Andrew was saying earlier. I'm very much that person that I'm good for receiving things, but I'm good for correcting them right then so that we don't have an understanding when we move away from this moment. You know where I am, I know where you are. I might have to help you get across the line and understand something a bit different, but I'm not often challenged. My sisters say I have this serious, don't even try it demeanor. And I try, I'm about business. When I get in there, I'm about business. And there's a good time to be had by all, but I don't have a great tolerance for disrespect or biases or people feeling comfortable enough to express them, to say, oh, well, we didn't know about people like you. That's a pretty bold statement. But then I worked in a lot of golf clubs, high-end golf clubs and events. And I would be the only person of color walking around there. And I would have one Jewish person that was with me, and they were the only person, one Asian person. And I said, oh, it's the United Nations here today. There's one of each one of us, but nonetheless, yeah, you're gonna find people that present what Felipe said, or, that try and challenge us. But I don't get it often personally. But I welcome those opportunities, is how I always describe it. I welcome those opportunities so that I can help you understand, certain things when it's happening.
So with everything that's going on right now, with it being such a hot conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, how would you say we can measure changes to diversity in the event industry? And this can be Andrew and Felipe.
So I think the biggest thing is that we have to use data. And I know data is not the fun and sexy conversation to have when it comes to things like this, but the only way that we can actually figure out what isn't hypothetical or what is a hypothesis is to be able to use data to drive this conversation, to see what is going right. Because when I look at the industry at large, not everything is going wrong. There's plenty of things that's going right, and even starting to go right, because people are starting to see what changes or what things that they've been doing that shouldn't, be carried out. So I think that if we use data, we can honestly figure out, one, how many of the industry has 21% of Black, Indigenous, and people of color that are in the event industry that's operating out of it. That's fact, right? By census. So things that data will allow me to know is that how wealthy is that 21%? How much work is that 21% getting? How much work aren't they getting? How much work is going to the 87% that are white men, the 73% that are white women? You know what I mean? So I want to be able to use data that allows us to shape the conversations that we have for diversity, equity, and inclusion. But I also want to use data to be able to drive forward the actionable steps that we need to be taking as an industry to be able to improve the systemic racism that we know is present within our industry. But I don't want to be able to say, well, because Andrew feels a certain way, that means everybody else feels that way. With data, it's more solidified, it's more accurate and factual. So I really would like us, for organizations, ILEA included, to be able to serve as that mantle, to use data to push forward how we can really attack what we're seeing, which is at this moment the lack of diversity and inclusion, because it's very present.
In our case, and I'm taking this from NGLCC, the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce based in Washington, is being reported by them that by 2019, up to 1.7 trillion of US dollars are generated by LGBT-owned businesses in the US. That's something powerful, relevant, important. And what we do in the chambers of commerce that are working with sexual diversity to promote inclusive businesses, we try to measure three main things. The first one, talking about measurements and data, is what are the sources we are getting diverse suppliers, which is important, from where either associations or other chambers of commerce or collective groups of individuals and business owners, from where we are reaching those. And the bigger, the better, because you need to diversify your sources. Second, for sure, is expenditure. How much money, how many dollars are you actually contracting with those different vendors, which is very important, and that number ideally should grow. And third, that is very, very important, lastly, is also how those businesses that you are contracting with how much employment and taxes they are being able to generate and to pay because of that. Because when you are measuring those three things, you have like an entire perspective of the supply chain of the event industry. And if you are measuring your sources, the amount of expenditure, the dollars, and how those businesses are thriving, generating more employment and paying more taxes, then you can report that. And then you have the evidence that is not only about the speech and the talk, but actually you are walking the talk, as I say at the beginning.
Right. And I'm gonna ask that because I love that Felipe, that you brought up the supplier chain, because when we look at supplier diversity, and I'm wearing my National Events Council hat now. So when we look at supplier diversity, 43% of organizations within the United States only even check to make sure that their supplier diversity programs are effective. 43%. That is crazy. 81% of organizations within the United States say that they want to have a better diversity and inclusion organization, but only 23% actually do something about it. So we have to figure out why that is, because it is crazy to me to believe that the sole purpose of supplier diversity programs is to ensure that Black, brown people have access to be able to fulfill requirements of big organizations, but those organizations are not doing anything to ensure that inclusivity aspect about it is actually being used to their advantage. So it's crazy to see these numbers, and that's why I keep going back to data, but it's really crazy to see how important we have to. I think you hit it on the head, Felipe, when you say people want to do stuff, but when it comes down to actually doing it, we're not seeing it happen. So it's just, it's crazy.
Wow. I want to continue this.
Steve, just a tad bit on those numbers. Also, look deep into the numbers, because what we find in the TV and film industry is two things. People like to group. So they'll say, oh, women and minorities made up 51% of this. And I say, okay, extract the Caucasian females. And then where are we with that number? Yep. You know, it's skewed. That number might be 10%, but you combine it. And then if you turn around and you say, okay, it's 20% people of color. How many repeats do you have in there? Are you really spreading the wealth, or did 20% of the time everybody booked Felipe and Andrew? So really you have two people that are supplying 20% of the business, as opposed to 20% of people of color getting the business. Yeah, so sometimes it's in how people, you know, how they query the numbers. You just really need to just be honest about it and be straightforward. And that's the only way you can make change. Otherwise, it's just the shifting of the, you know, yeah.
So in close,
Pixie dust, that ain't magical. It don't work.
Plus one must equal two.
Right.
This is a great place for me to ask my final question of you guys, and it's about event supplier diversity. What are some ways that you feel like we can overcome supplier diversity challenges? And this is for all three.
Yep. I think that, I mean, the biggest thing is that we have to hold our leaders to the fire, right? I think that if we have, a lot of us are decision makers, you know, and I'm not speaking to the C-suite at this point, because we know that there's challenges with that. But I'm speaking to everyone that is a business owner, a small business owner. I'm speaking to the planners, the producers, the florists, the bakers, the venue management, production teams. All of us are decision makers at some point in our careers. And it is up to us to begin recommending diverse staff members to our clients. Because word of mouth is so critical. Being able to be a referral partner is so critical. And when we remove ourselves from that process, we continue to allow people to be hired again and again and again. And if we are really wanting to be change agents, if we want to call ourselves allies, if we want to be those partners in crime against diversity or against the lack of diversity, against racism, and everything else, we have to recommend people that can do the work. And it goes to enlightenment. If you don't bring about enlightenment to someone, they will never know. They're going to keep doing what they always do. And we have to take up that mantle. We have to take it and make it our responsibility to say, you know what? I know a great florist who, by the way, is white, or I know a great producer who, by the way, is Asian or Indian. But we have to take it upon ourselves to do that work. And until we do that, we're going to keep seeing the cycle that we're in right now. We really are.
In my case, I have to advocate for the type of organizations that I'm working with and that I am leading right now. That is a Chamber of Commerce. I am a truly believer of the power of association and the effects that generates at any industry, and especially in the event industry because it's so robust and so dynamic. Today, with so many accesses to different sources of information that I can just very easily Google something and find it out right away with one click on my phone. I believe reliable sources of information are crucial these days to succeed in businesses. Chambers of commerce, for example, or different associations like the one I am leading, for me, add a lot of value in industries like the event industry, because we are able to curate information. We are able to also connect and enable spaces and provide platforms to businesses to connect each other and actually to strive for quality and for a better competitiveness of those businesses. So I would recommend that, especially in an overloaded of information world as the one we are living today, these type of associations or different entities such as Chamber of Commerce or collective groups of businesses have to continue being there, have to continue adding value to connecting businesses, to promoting reliable businesses that and vendors that you can trust with. And at the end, this is something that I always share with our businesses in the Chamber of Commerce. Difference is power. Today more than ever, the more different you are, the more powerful you are as a human being or as a business, and the more different we are as collective thinking an event and a group of vendors that are getting together to deliver an event. The more different we are, the more we can add value to that client. And we should continue striving to maintain that difference as a source of innovation and to remain competitive in this industry.
And I think I will say in closing that both of excuse me, Andrew and Felipe's points were very well taken. I think that people need to refer, we need to look at agencies and so forth, but I have found that oftentimes it comes from within. It comes from me making sure that my brother or sister have an opportunity to tap into business. I often tell people, I once heard former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright say that there is a special place in hell for women that do not help other women. I believe that. But I also believe that there's even a more special place in hell for people of color who do not help other people of color, because we know what the struggle is and we know that it's real. So I'm always looking to find ways to engage other people of color, and not only people of color, just in addition to people of color, you know, and assist them, because sometimes it's not going to help. You know, it's not going to happen, I should say, without us making a conscious effort to assist amongst ourselves as well.
Well, I want to take a couple of questions that are in the chat box. This first one, let's go ahead and go with Felipe. Knowing the lack of representation in our industry, what are suggestions for encouraging diversity and upper level management in companies and not just service contract staff?
That's a tough one, especially because, especially when you are talking about big corporations or high level of management in corporations, qualifications and experience are crucial. So what I would say is, especially on the chamber, we do this, we promote a lot any opportunity of those companies or those corporations that are actually advancing further in diversity and inclusion to be an example to the other ones. A lot of companies and corporations are afraid, and especially C-level or top management are afraid to give the opportunity to people that look or think or just is different. And we have been successful highlighting those good practices from key players in different industries regarding diversity and inclusion. And with those examples, we have been able not only to knock doors, but actually to open those doors for those companies or corporations that are still afraid to give the opportunity to people that by one or two high-level executives think or look different. And that would be my recommendation for today.
Okay. Andrew, this one's for you. What's going on well in terms of diversity in the live events industry? Are there any sectors or more specific businesses or associations currently doing well with supporting diversity?
I think that there's so much that's going well for championing, diversity. One, we are now seeing a lot of the traditional publications for events and especially weddings that are really highlighting Black people and people of color for the superior work that they're doing, which I think is a really awesome thing to do because it's all about representation. We're now seeing a lot of the voices of marginalized and underrepresented communities being heard, being given a platform to actually talk about their stories. But additionally, we're now seeing so many virtual events and conferences and webinars like this that are bringing about great conversations to be able to really continue this and to be able to be change agents globally. So those things are really working. But then we also have a lot of organizations, my organization, National Events Council, started because of this, because we wanted to be able to ensure that the event industry was more diverse and inclusive. So we have not just mine, but there's a lot of other organizations that have sprung up that are being a part of this conversation, being a part of this movement, and really bringing about changes, creating great standards, making sure that diversity and inclusion is something that from the ground up is part of organizations. We're seeing companies out here that I saw, I can't remember what article I saw today, but there's companies that are donating millions and billions of dollars to ensure diversity happens. And so we have to hold everybody to the fire. If you're going to give us this money, we're going to make sure that it is being put to use the proper way. But we're also want to make sure that you guys are not just throwing money at something because you want it to be fixed, because we know that that's not going to be the solution. So there's so many great things that are happening for diversity, and I'm really proud to see these things being implemented.
Perfect. Well, we could continue talking all day about this topic, but unfortunately we've come to the end of our time today. I want to say thank you to our panelists, Sheila, Felipe, and Andrew. When we can all get together, I'd love to meet in some city and have a drink and continue the conversation, broadcast it from there. You guys, I wish you much success to continue impacting our industry and creating diverse and inclusive places for all. We appreciate your time today and insight. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Gwen.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks again to Giants Enterprises for being our partner in these webinars. And I just wanted to say just a heartfelt thank you to this panel. You guys were awesome. It was really insightful. It was a very important conversation, and each of you handled it with grace. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll have information coming out really soon on our next webinar, and we appreciate you being here today, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.